Rev up your engines!
Even BMW now has jumped onto the bandwagon. Their 7 Series now has one of those huge giant grills in the front that started with the Lexus. I guess they're just like sheep. They just follow each other along. When one's got a big mouth in the front, they're all, even BMW, which is a pretty staid conservative company, and they're, these 7 Series are very expensive cars. Even they're gone into these gigantic grills now in the front. I don't know. As far as I'm concerned, all these manufacturers, they're just sheep following each other around. When I was young, I mean, it was tail fins, and they kept making them bigger and bigger and bigger, and they had these ridiculous tail fins that really served no purpose. It wasn't like these were vehicles that were going 200 miles an hour. Some of these things couldn't even make it up to 100 miles an hour. Aerodynamics has nothing to do with it. So they kept putting these tail fins, just like now, they just keep making these bigger and bigger grills because they think that's what people want. But BMW's jumped on the bandwagon. Now they got one with a big grill on it too. Dylan Featheringham says, is a 2013 Chrysler 200 a good car? One word, no. Okay, that was basically, most of that stuff was all Fiat. I rented one time when I went to Nashville to visit my son. Well, what a pile of junk that thing was. They don't make them anymore. And like I say, they got the Fiat engine, Fiat transmission, which is garbage. They're horrible cars. Now, that said, if you can get one dirt cheap, $800 or something, and it runs still and goes, it might be a halfway decent knockaround car, but don't think it's going to be a dependable car. They were piles of junk, and they don't make them anymore. Good-oo. Scotty, I'm thinking of buying a 99 Toyota RAV4, 260,000 miles. Has a slight knocking noise when test driving. Is a good buy for $1,500. No. You get knocking noise in the engine's worn. It's got 260,000 miles. Could be rod knocking from ward bearings. Or the cams are knocking inside. You get engine knocking noise, don't buy a vehicle. If you're going to buy a vehicle like that, I'd give them $500 and then put a used engine in it. I would not pay $1,500. Not with that mileage, with any knocking noise at all. Toyota makes good vehicles, but any engine that's worn and makes knocking noise, stay away from it. Don't buy somebody else's problem unless you're willing to get it really cheap and then put in an engine in it or something like that. Scotty, I'm almost 66 years old. I'm single on a very modest fixed income. I own an '01 Frontier with 113,000 miles, well maintained. Any suggestions for my next and possibly last vehicle? Well, if you want something like that, get a Toyota. Get a 4Runner or get a Toyota Highlander. Those things can run forever. You got 113,000 miles. It's an '01 Frontier. If it still runs, my advice is keep driving it. You never know. '01, they were still okay. Renault just had merged with Nissan. They hadn't destroyed the company yet. And if it works, keep going. You're not going to get anything for it when you sell it. So why not just keep driving it and then get a Toyota after that? Floyd Waters. How could replacing upper control arms make the steering worse when it's supposed to fix it and tighten it up? You get front end alignment work done, you got a pro who knows what they're doing, because some of that front end alignment stuff is thousandths of an inch here or there. You can't tell by looking at it. Even I can't tell by looking at it. I gotta send it to my alignment guy who's got all this fancy laser computer equipment to adjust the stuff. The control arms are worn out. Generally, by the time they're worn out, a lot of stuff is worn out. And so if they put new control arms on, use a bunch of old parts over, it could make it worse because now the control arms are straight and then it won't track right because maybe last time it was aligned with weak control arms and they had to do some mods to the alignment to make it go sort of straight. And then if you put new control arms that are the correct angle and the alignment wasn't done over, then it could make it worse. I've seen that myself over the years many times. Anytime you get serious work like that done, you want it to be aligned by a professional who knows what he's doing. You can't look at it yourself. Like I say, even I can't do it. I'm not going to go out and buy $100,000 worth of equipment to do alignments when I can just send them to my alignment guy and he does it. That's his business, not mine. Just like I don't paint cars. You got to know what you're good at and stick to it, really. Look at mine, 83 says, Scotty, is going to Texas to buy a used car a good idea? I live up north of the Salt Eats up your crowd. Sure, just stay away from cars on the Gulf Coast like Galveston where they rot really fast. I got a old friend, he's dead now, died young in his 50s, who was a cameraman at CBS, and he had a place right on the ocean, and his car's rotted in 3-4 years. He had a motorcycle, hardly ever used it. Even the aluminum on it corroded away because he lived right on the beach. I knew a guy in Chicago. He came down to Texas 4 4 or 5 times a year with a car hauler. He would buy like 6 or 7 cars in Texas, take them back to Chicago, and the guys that he knew there gave him $5 grand a piece for the cars. No questions at all, as long as they had the Texas tags on them and weren't rusted. And he'd buy them for $2,000, $3,000, and then that guy paid him $5, and then he'd turn them and sell them for $7,000 to $8,000. So it's not a bad idea if you got the time to look around. They don't rust here. Even better is Arizona, because Arizona, there's no salt water and it's really dry, so cars do not rust in Arizona. You might go to Phoenix and look around. Kent Fontenzo, Scotty, I want to purchase a delivery car. I was wondering, what would be a better choice, a stick Honda or a stick shift Toyota? Well, actually, they're pretty close together there. I personally would get the stick shift Toyota, but the Hondas are a little quicker, and the main problem with Hondas is their automatic transmission. So right there, I would go with the Toyota. If you want something that's going to last the longest, though, the one I would get would be the one that didn't have gasoline direct injection or a turbocharger, because they would last longer without that stuff. So whichever one you pick, make sure it's the one that doesn't have gasoline direct injection and doesn't have a turbocharger. It'll last longer. Hegel says, does DexCool destroy engines? Well, it used to. Here's the thing. GM came out with their long life extended coolant called it DexCool. Well, the original ones, they made it incorrectly, but this was decades ago. And I had customers that brought me Chevys, and these things had 20,000 miles on them, and their cooling system was all clogged up. The water pump got rusted out and fell off. They didn't need any maintenance by the book then, but they had made the DexCool wrong. Well, they've improved it, and there's no problem with the DexCool anymore. I mean, that's something that has been fixed a long time ago. You don't really have to worry about it anymore. But the really old stuff did cause problems. It was years, decades ago that they had, and they did have problems, but not anymore. Mr. Anaconda, Scotty, did you ever race cars when you were younger? No, only motorcycles. I was always into speeding motorcycles because speeding cars cost too much money, and I was a poor boy. And you could buy a motorcycle back in those days used for $500, and it would blow any car off the road because the power to weight ratio. You got a motorcycle, you're basically sitting on an engine with 2 wheels. So if you've got, say, back in the day when I was young, 65 horsepower was a lot for a motorcycle. You got 65 horsepower and something that weighed 400 pounds. Hey, you got a car that weighs 2,000 pounds. For the equivalent, you would need, 400 or 500 horsepower. But who wants to pay for that and get the really horrible gas mileage where motorcycles were cheaper, faster, and basically a lot more fun if you knew how to drive and didn't kill yourself. Obviously, I didn't kill myself because I'm still here. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.